Hello, trail travelers. Today we're talking radios. I have a new radio here, the Talkpod A36Plus. It's a handheld 5-watt GMRS radio. That's what it is. It's a GMRS radio. Now, is it worth getting over my trusty and favorite so far, Radiology GM30? Good question, right? So I'm going to use that as kind of my baseline because I have been using the GM30 for a long time and the Talkpod is new. Now, full disclosure, they did send this to me at no cost. They're not sponsoring this. They're not seeing this video before I post it, and I'm not asking for their input on it. So there's that. This is going to be my opinions on here of what I think of the Talkpod, and again, in comparison to what you get with the Radiology. Now, the Radiology, $39 on Amazon. Talkpod, $49, $10 more. So right there has a slight price disadvantage of $10. But let's dig into it. Is that a big deal? First, size-wise, they're pretty much identical. There's really no difference in the size. The Talkpod does have this taller antenna. Is that going to make much of a difference? Don't know. Exterior-wise, the layout's the same. The buttons are the same. The menus are damn near identical. If you can use one, you can use the other. So there's that. The Radiology has a strobe beacon on top, little flashlight function. I've never used that, so not important to me. The Talkpod does not. They both have a signal beacon that transmits, again, something I've never used. Aside from that, features are pretty much identical. And they both support privacy codes, which we use all the time. It was very easy to program on here, exactly the same way I programmed it on the Radiology. Sort of. We'll get to that. All the other standard features that you would expect: push to talk, open this cover up, you've got a headphone jack, a microphone jack, uses the exact same headset pieces, if you will, that the Radiology or the Baofeng UV5R uses. It uses the same programming cable. Now the Radiology GM30, you have to use their software to program it. That's kind of a downside. Now, most all the programming you can do right on the display using the keypad, so not a real big disadvantage. But being that I am a Mac guy, I do not have a bunch of Windows machines here. I keep one old laptop around just for those things that only have Windows software. The Radiology is not programmable using Chirp. So that's a negative in my book, although I was able to program it with my laptop, and I've programmed other people's in the field just using the display and the buttons on here. The Talkpod has their own software, again, Windows only, but it is supported with the latest versions of Chirp. Well, Chirp runs on a Mac, therefore I was able to do some of my setup stuff that I wanted to do on the Mac pretty easily. So win for the A36Plus for being able to use Chirp. Now, when we talk about accessories, well, the Radiology doesn't really come with any accessories. It does have a USB-A to USB-C cable that you can plug into any wall wart that you have, and it charges off USB-C. Okay? Pretty simple, and that's one of the reasons why I love the GM30, is I can charge it in the Jeep while we're driving. I don't have to worry about some clunky, janky base station like the UV5R. This will just plug in and you can use it even if the battery's dead, and it'll charge. A36Plus, same thing. USB-C on the bottom, so you can charge it on the go. However, it also comes with a 110 volt base station. And this base station is not all wonky and janky like the UV5R one is. It is very secure in here. So I could actually use this in a vehicle if I wanted to and charge off 110. I don't need to, but I can charge it at home or just leave it running all the time at home as a base station by leaving it in here, where the UV5R, it flops around and very often it'll shift and not charge. So there's that. It does come with a USB-A to USB-C cable, so I can just take that, plug it into whatever I want, and get it charged. It also comes with the programming cable. Normally this is like an extra 12 bucks. So if you're going to buy a Radiology GM30 and a programming cable, you have just spent more than you would on the Talkpod A36Plus. Now, unlike pretty much everything that you buy these days, it also comes with a 110 to USB-A charging block. So everything you need to charge this, it comes with it. What you need to program it comes with it. So for that, again, kind of a win for the A36Plus here. I'm not knocking the Radiology. Again, I love this radio. It has been super reliable. It works great. The Talkpod, just as a value proposition, comes with more stuff. And it's easier to program because we can use Chirp. Okay, that said, let's talk about the interface on here. Interface is very clean. It's a color display. That's kind of cute. The Radiology and the UV5R are just black and white screens. This has a color display. Not that that is really useful that it's color, but it does have it. You've got two different channels on here on the screen you can switch to. You can on the Radiology, so no big win on either one of these. Now, programming the DCS codes for our privacy channel, exactly the same, except I can use Chirp on this one, but from the display and the buttons on here, I can set these up exactly. In fact, I think it's even the same menu number. So there's no big difference there. But the question is, okay, great. We have a value proposition here that puts this ahead, but what about in actual use? Does it work well? Does it work any better? How does it work out in the field? Well, we have taken this on the last few off-roading trips. I've used it one day. I handed it to someone else who forgot their radio that day. I've let other people use it. And you know what? There's no distinct advantage on either one of these. They both work great. We have the same amount of range on them. They're both 5-watt radios. So there's no real use case advantage of the A36Plus. Now, I will say getting it in this bright neon green color does make it easier to find when it's on the floor or in the back or in a box of stuff. You cannot miss this radio. To me, that is not a negative. I love the fact that this thing is so easy to find that it's just not an issue. They both have belt clips on them. So again, pretty much identical there. Talk time, I've charged this one time. I have put it on the charger and I've fully charged it. I did a bunch of tests with it and it has been on 3 different trail days with us. And I have, I would say, 75% battery left on here. Now that's pretty much equivalent what I get with the Radiology. So again, no apparently big difference in actual usability time. These things last a long, long time. So if your choices are between like a UV5R, the Radiology GM30, Talkpod A36Plus, what would my recommendation be? Well, first off, I do not recommend the UV5R anymore. The charging station that it comes with is super janky and it sometimes does not charge properly. There's no USB port on it to charge it. And technically, or legally, I guess you could say, it's not legal to use on GMRS because it is a ham radio. It does not have the restrictions in it that a GMRS radio has. Now these two are GMRS radios. They do not talk on ham radio. Now the Talkpod There is a firmware you can get, from what I understand, the international firmware that can allow you to do air channels. But I'm not going to test that. For me, I want to stick completely legal with this radio. I did upgrade the firmware when I got it. There was no noticeable difference in the firmware that I installed. It is still locked down to GMRS frequencies. So, where would I go these days, right? I have probably a year of experience with the Radiology. It has never failed. It has worked great. It is a solid recommendation at 40 bucks. The Talkpod A36Plus, I've only had for a few weeks. It has been rock solid. I've had no issues with it. It comes with a really solid base station. It comes with a USB brick and the cable, and it comes with the charging cable. You know, I gotta say, I am impressed with the Talkpod. It's not from a company that I've known about before. It's not one that I hear talked about online at all, really. There's a couple radio review channels that have gone over this and have talked about, you know, signal strength and cleanness and all that, and really they all compare pretty good across the board. But I think if you're going to take a radio right out of the box and just use it, then you might as well save 10 bucks and get the GM30. You're going to plug it in and it's going to work. There's really nothing to it. If you're going to have different situations where you want to keep it either on at home or maybe in an office or a business environment where you need to have the radio on all the time, you want a base station that's really solid, well, that's definitely a win there. If you plan on doing any programming of it. Now, why would you do programming? Well, one use case, as I've already mentioned, is privacy codes. Now, I have it, I'll put a link up above to my video on privacy codes and what they are. It is a misnomer. They're not private, sort of. So we have a particular channel that we use with particular codes that we enable on the radios. This allows our radios throughout our group to talk and hear to each other. We cannot hear anybody else that's on the same channel. However, they can hear us. So they may be just a few vehicles away and they can hear us just fine, but when they go to transmit, the privacy code blocks that and we do not hear it. So if someone hears us and they want to get a hold of us, they can't because we have privacy codes turned on. So if you want to do those types of setups, having the programming cable included is definitely a win instead of having to go through and program it on here. Another one that makes really easy using Chirp and the programming cable is if you use repeaters. So I was able to set up repeaters on here because I pulled out my old Windows laptop. I used their software and set up our local repeaters on here. On here, I just used Chirp, no problem, set up the repeaters, and it works just fine. Again, advantage because it came with the cable. Now, I actually could have used the cable for the Radiology because it's the same cable as the UV5R. So this is kind of a universal cable, but it's the software compatibility. The ability to use Chirp means I can, grab someone else's profile. As soon as I put in the rest of our repeaters on here, I can publish that file to our GMRS group here in Colorado. So anybody can just download that file, boom, install it using Chirp, and they've got this up and going. I cannot do that with the GM30. So overall, I'm very impressed with the radio. It works very well. It's as good as any other handheld radio that I found. Now, it doesn't say that it's waterproof. I've never needed to worry about that, even though we've dropped radios in the snow many, many times. That type of stuff isn't going to hurt it. I've never dropped one in a river or a lake, thank goodness. But I don't think we need ruggedized radios for our needs. So that I'm not too concerned about. There's radios that can send location information or even text messages. Again, not features that we use because we have to be compatible in our trips with everybody else's radio. So having just a standard GMRS radio of any type, any brand, they can communicate with each other without any problems. So sound quality, fantastic. When I'm talking, the microphone quality, everyone says it sounds really good. When I had other people on it, they sounded perfectly fine, just as good as the GM30. So there you have it. I think it's a valid option for people, and just look at the value proposition. If you need the extra stuff, well, then you're going to save money by getting the A36 Plus over the GM30 when you have to add the programming cable. So that's it. I'll put links in the description below. No affiliate links, nothing like that. It's purely my opinions on the radio. I'm very, very happy with it. And, you know, I hope they do some new stuff. I hope they come out with a range of radios of different styles, different features and things, because they did a bang-up job on this one. So thanks for watching, everybody. That's been my review of the A36 Plus. Be safe out there. We'll see you on the trails.